You've been told your whole life that caring deeply is a virtue, that the more you invest emotionally, the better person you are, that worrying about what people think means you're considerate, that obsessing over outcomes means you're responsible. And somewhere along the way, you started believing that if you stopped caring so much, you'd become cold, selfish, disconnected. But here's what nobody told you. Caring too much about the wrong things is exhausting. It's not noble. It's not strength. It's a slow leak in your soul that drains you while giving nothing back. You spend your energy on people who don't notice, on opinions that don't matter, on situations you were never meant to control. And at the end of the day, you're the one left empty. The truth is, the happiest people you'll ever meet aren't the ones who care about everything. They're the ones who learned what to stop caring about. They didn't become heartless, they became free. They stopped carrying weight that was never theirs to lift, and once they did, everything changed. This isn't about becoming indifferent, it's about becoming intelligent with your emotions. And if you've ever felt tired from caring too much about things that never cared back, then what I'm about to share might just be the shift you've been waiting for. There's a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. You know the one. It's not in your body. It's somewhere deeper. It's the weight of caring about too many things that never cared back. It's the mental fog that comes from replaying conversations, overanalyzing silences, wondering if you said the wrong thing, wondering if you are the wrong thing. It's exhausting. And the strangest part is, most of the world will never see it. You smile. You show up. You function. But inside you're running on fumes because your emotional tank has been leaking for years and you never knew where the hole was. I've been there. I spent a long stretch of my life believing that being emotionally invested in everything made me a good person. I thought caring deeply about every relationship, every opinion, every outcome was a sign of maturity. I thought it meant I had a big heart. What I didn't realize was that I wasn't being generous. I was being reckless. I was throwing my piece into situations that didn't need it and people who didn't value it. And while I was busy caring, I was slowly disappearing. Here's what nobody really prepares you for. Caring too much can look like love, but it often isn't. It looks like loyalty. It looks like dedication. But when you peel it back, a lot of it is fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being misunderstood. Fear of being forgotten. And so you keep investing. You keep holding on. You keep checking in, showing up, going the extra mile, because some part of you believes that if you stop caring, everything will fall apart. But one day something does fall apart. Maybe it's a friendship that ends without explanation. Maybe it's a job that lets you go despite your efforts. Maybe it's a relationship where you gave everything and still weren't enough. And in that collapse, you're forced to sit with an uncomfortable truth. All that caring didn't protect you. It didn't guarantee anything. It just made the fall hurt more. That's the part no one tells you when they say things like, follow your heart or give it your all. They don't mention that your heart can lead you into exhaustion. They don't mention that giving it your all to the wrong thing leaves you with nothing. And they certainly don't warn you that some of the deepest pain you'll feel in life comes not from being betrayed by others, but from betraying yourself by never learning when to stop. I want to be honest with you here. This isn't a message about becoming cold. This isn't about shutting people out or pretending nothing matters. That's not freedom. That's just a different kind of prison. What I want to talk about is something more nuanced. It's the skill of learning where your care belongs and where it's being wasted. It's the emotional intelligence to know when you're investing and when you're just bleeding, because there's a difference. And that difference changes everything. You see, most of us were never taught how to care wisely. We were taught to care completely, Be there for everyone. Put others first. Don't be selfish. And those aren't bad values, but without balance, they become a trap. Because when you care about everything equally, you end up caring about nothing effectively. Your energy spreads so thin that the people and things that truly matter get the same attention as the noise, and eventually you burn out. Not because life was too hard, but because you never learned to protect yourself from your own empathy. That's where this shift begins. Not with anger, not with resentment, but with clarity. A quiet moment where you stop and ask yourself, what am I carrying right now that was never mine to hold? Who am I trying to please that has never once tried to understand me? What outcome am I obsessing over that I cannot control, no matter how much I worry? When you start asking those questions, the answers come fast, and sometimes they sting, because you realize how much of your life has been spent pouring into empty wells. How many nights were lost replaying things that the other person forgot by morning? How many decisions were made not because they were right for you, but because you were afraid of what someone else might think? That's not living. That's performing. And performances are exhausting when there's no audience that matters. So if you've ever felt like your kindness is being taken for weakness, like your emotional energy keeps going out but nothing ever comes back, like you're tired in a way that no vacation can fix, this is for you. Because what I've learned, slowly and sometimes painfully, is that happiness doesn't come from caring more. It comes from caring smarter. It comes from building a wall, not around your heart, but around your peace. And once that wall goes up, you don't become less loving. You become more free. And from that place, everything starts to look different. Let me ask you something. How much of your day do you spend reacting, not acting, not choosing, just reacting? Someone posts something online that irritates you, and suddenly your thumbs are moving before your brain catches up. A co-worker makes a comment and you spend the next 2 hours mentally drafting your comeback. Someone cuts you off in traffic and your whole mood shifts. You didn't choose any of that. It chose you. And that's the trap. We live in a world that's designed to provoke you. Every notification, every headline, every comment section is engineered to pull a reaction out of you. And most of us fall for it. We think reacting means we're engaged. We think it means we care. But here's the truth. Nobody wants to admit. Most of your reactions don't change anything except your own peace of mind. The person who upsets you moves on in minutes. You carry it for hours, sometimes days. This is what I call emotional leakage. It's not dramatic, it's subtle. It happens in small doses throughout your day. A bit of frustration here, a flash of anger there, a spiral of overthinking that starts from something someone said 3 weeks ago. And by the end of the day, you're drained. Not because anything terrible happened, but because you bled out emotionally in 100 tiny ways. The worst part is we convince ourselves that reacting is a form of control. Like if we respond, we're taking charge of the situation. But it's the opposite. Every time you react without thinking, you hand your power to whoever or whatever triggered you. You let external noise dictate your internal state. And that's not strength. That's surrender, dressed up as toughness. Here's what I've learned. Silence is not weakness. Choosing not to respond is not the same as not caring. In fact, it takes far more force to pause than it does to explode. Anyone can fire back. Anyone can clap back. Anyone can type an angry response. That's easy. What's hard is sitting with the discomfort, letting the moment pass, and realizing that your energy is worth more than this. When you stop reacting to everything, something shifts. You start seeing situations more clearly. You stop being drawn into battles that were never yours to fight. And slowly, you begin to understand that not every opinion deserves a response. Not every insult deserves your attention, and not every person who wants a reaction from you deserves the satisfaction of getting one. Silence isn't about letting people walk over you. It's about choosing where you walk. It's about redirecting the energy you used to waste on noise and putting it somewhere that actually matters. And once you learn that skill, you stop being exhausted by a world that's designed to exhaust you. Now, I want to be real with you. Choosing silence sounds good in theory, but in practice, it's one of the hardest things you'll ever do, because there's a voice inside you, and you know exactly which one I'm talking about. That doesn't want to stay quiet. That voice wants to protect. It wants to explain. It wants to prove. It wants to win. That voice has been with you for years. It's the one that whispers things like, you can't let them think that about you, or if you don't respond, they'll think they won. And in the moment, that voice sounds completely reasonable. It feels like self-respect. It feels like standing your ground. But here's what that voice doesn't tell you. Most of the time, responding doesn't change anyone's mind. It just extends the conflict. It keeps you engaged with something that was already draining you. And worse, it keeps your mind occupied long after the conversation ends. Picture this. You're at work and someone takes credit for something you did, not in a huge way, but enough that it stings. You feel the heat rise. Your mind starts racing. You want to say something, correct the record, make sure everyone knows. So you bring it up. You explain yourself, and maybe they back down, or maybe it turns into a whole thing. Either way, you've now spent 20 minutes of mental energy on something that might not matter in a week. Now imagine a different version. You notice it. You feel the sting. But instead of reacting, you take a breath. You remind yourself that your value doesn't depend on this one moment. You let it go. Not because you're weak, but because you've decided that this isn't worth your peace. That 20 minutes you saved, you put it towards something that actually moves your life forward. That's restraint. And restraint is not about suppressing your emotions. It's about choosing which emotions deserve your action. Some things are worth fighting for. Most things aren't. Wisdom is knowing the difference. The hard part is that restraint doesn't feel good at first. It feels like losing. It feels like letting someone get away with something. But over time, you start to realize that the real loss is spending your life in a constant state of defense. The real loss is never having peace, because you're always reacting to someone else's noise. Learning restraint is learning to sit with discomfort without acting on it. And that's a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. There's a moment that changes everything. It doesn't happen in some dramatic scenes. It happens quietly, usually when you least expect it. It's the first time you choose silence, when every part of you wants to speak. Maybe someone says something that cuts deep. Maybe you're in an argument that's going nowhere. Maybe you're about to send a message that you know will only make things worse. And instead of doing what you've always done, you stop. You put the phone down. You walk away. You say nothing. And then something strange happens. The world doesn't collapse. The other person doesn't win. In fact, nothing happens at all. The moment passes. And you're still standing. But something inside you has shifted. That first act of chosen silence is powerful because it breaks the pattern. For years, maybe your whole life, you've operated on autopilot. Trigger, reaction, regret, over and over. But in that one moment, you stepped outside the loop. You proved to yourself that you don't have to be controlled by your impulses, that you have a choice. And once you feel that, you can't unfeel it. The turning point isn't about winning an argument. It's about realizing you don't need to. It's about discovering that your peace is more valuable than being right, that your energy is too precious to spend on people and situations that don't deserve it. I remember the first time I really felt this. I was in a conversation that was going in circles. The other person wanted a reaction, wanted me to engage, wanted me to defend myself, and for the first time, I just didn't. I listened, I nodded, and I let it end. No rebuttal, no explanation, just silence. Afterward, I expected to feel weak. I expected to feel like I'd lost something. But I didn't. I felt lighter. I felt free. I realized that I've been carrying this invisible weight of needing to respond to everything, and in that one moment, I set it down. That's the turning point. It's not loud. It's not dramatic, but it changes the direction of your life. Because once you know you can choose silence, you start choosing it more often. And every time you do, you take back a little more of yourself. Now let's go deeper. Because silence isn't just a one-time decision. It's a discipline. It's something you build over time, like a muscle that grows stronger with use. And like any discipline, it requires training. Most people think emotional control means suppressing what you feel, pushing it down, pretending it's not there. But that's not control, that's denial. And denial always catches up with you eventually. Real emotional control is different. It's about feeling what you feel without being ruled by it. It's about creating space between the emotion and the action. Think of it this way. When something triggers you, there's a moment, sometimes just a second, between the feeling and the response. Most people don't even notice that gap. They feel the anger and immediately they're speaking, typing, reacting. But that gap is where your power lives. That tiny space is where you get to choose. Building emotional discipline means stretching that gap, making it longer, giving yourself more time to decide whether this reaction is worth it. And over time, what used to feel automatic starts to feel optional. You realize you don't have to respond just because you feel something. This isn't about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming intentional. It's about training your mind to ask better questions in heated moments. Questions like, will this matter in a week? Is this person worth my energy? What do I actually want from this interaction? When you start asking those questions, you start making better choices. You stop sending messages you'll regret. You stop engaging in arguments that lead nowhere. You stop giving your best energy to your worst moments. Emotional discipline also means taking care of your baseline. When you're tired, hungry, stressed, or overwhelmed, your gap shrinks. You react faster and think less. So part of the discipline is managing your state, getting enough rest, taking breaks, knowing when you're not in the right headspace to engage with something difficult. This is inner work. It's not flashy. It doesn't make for good social media content, but it's the foundation of everything else. Because when you can control your emotional responses, you can control the direction of your life. You stop being tossed around by every wave. You become the one who decides where you sail. I want to be honest about something. This path isn't always comfortable. In fact, there are moments when it feels downright lonely. When you start caring less about what others think, you might notice that some relationships shift. People who were used to you reacting, engaging, always being available, they might not know what to do with the new you. Some will respect it, others will resist it. And a few might walk away entirely. That's the cost. And I won't pretend it doesn't sting. There's a phase in this journey where you feel like you're standing alone, where the silence you've chosen starts to feel isolating. You watch others engaging in drama, getting attention, being validated for their reactions, and part of you wonders if you made the wrong choice. Part of you misses the noise. This is where most people turn back. They confuse peace with emptiness. They think that because things are quieter, something must be missing. But here's what I've learned. The emptiness you feel at first isn't a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's a sign that you're making room. For years, your emotional space was filled with noise, other people's opinions, constant reactions, endless mental chatter. When you clear that out, it feels empty at first, but that emptiness is actually space. Space for clarity, space for focus, space for the things that actually matter. The loneliness is temporary. The peace is permanent. On the other side of this discomfort is something most people never find. It's a quiet confidence that doesn't need validation. It's a self-respect that doesn't depend on others. It's the ability to be alone without being lonely, to be quiet without being weak, to be still without being stuck. The resistance you feel from others and from yourself is part of the process. It's not a sign to stop. It's a sign that you're changing. And change always meets resistance before it meets acceptance. Here's where things get interesting. When you stop reacting to everything, something shifts in how people treat you. Not everyone. Not immediately. But gradually, you start to notice it. People who used to push your buttons don't get the same result anymore. And when they don't get a reaction, they either escalate briefly or they stop entirely. Most stop, because what they wanted was your energy, and when you stop giving it, the game isn't fun anymore. At work, you might notice that people start taking you more seriously, not because you speak more, but because when you do speak, it carries weight. You're no longer the person who responds to every email within minutes, who engages in every office debate, who gets pulled into every conflict. You become someone who chooses their battles. And that commands a different kind of respect. In relationships, the change can be even more profound. When you stop trying to prove yourself, when you stop needing validation from every interaction, you show up differently. You're calmer, more present, less reactive. And the people who value those qualities draw closer, while the ones who fed on your reactions start to fade away. This isn't manipulation. It's natural selection. When you change your energy, you change what you attract. I've seen this play out in small ways. Someone who used to get under my skin made a comment, and instead of engaging, I just nodded and moved on. The look on their faces told me everything. They expected a response. They were ready for it. And when it didn't come, they didn't know what to do. That moment wasn't about winning. It was about realizing I had options I never knew I had. The world doesn't change overnight, but when you change, the world starts to reflect it back. You attract different people. You find yourself in different situations. Opportunities that were always there suddenly become visible because you're not distracted by noise anymore. And slowly, you realize that the less you care about the wrong things, the more space you have to care about the right ones. There's a level beyond restraint, beyond discipline. It's when you stop being a participant in every emotional situation and become an observer instead. This doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you start watching your feelings without being controlled by them. You notice the anger rising, but you don't become angry. You see the frustration building, but you don't let it drive. You become someone who watches the storm instead of getting swept up in it. This shift changes how you see everything. Arguments that used to consume you now look almost predictable. You see the patterns. You see how people push buttons, how conflicts escalate, how most drama follows the same script over and over. And because you can see it, you can choose not to play. Think about it. How many times in your life did reacting actually make things better? How many arguments did you win that were worth the energy you spent? How many times did defending yourself actually change someone's mind? If you're honest, The answer is almost never. Most reactions don't solve anything. They just extend the suffering. When you become the observer, you start asking different questions. Instead of, how do I win this? You asked, do I even need to play? Instead of, how do I make them understand? You asked, does their understanding actually change anything for me? These questions create distance, and distance creates clarity. From the observer's seat, you start to see how much of your life is spent on autopilot. How many choices weren't really choices at all, just conditioned responses? How much energy went to things that never deserved it? And once you see that, you can't unsee it. You start making different decisions. You engage less, but feel more. You speak less, but say more. You do less, but accomplish more. Because everything you do comes from choice, not compulsion. The observer doesn't ignore life. The observer engages with intention. And intention is the difference between living and just existing. There comes a point where silence stops being a strategy and becomes who you are. Not silent in a cold way, not distant in a disconnected way, but still grounded, unshakable in a way that has nothing to do with stubbornness and everything to do with peace. This is mastery. And it doesn't mean you never react. It means you choose when to react. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about the right things. It doesn't mean you're above emotion. It means you're no longer below it. Mastery of stillness is freedom. It's waking up without the weight of yesterday's arguments. It's scrolling past negativity without feeling the pull to engage. It's hearing criticism and being able to sit with it, take what's useful and release what's not. It's having boundaries that don't need to be defended because they're built into how you carry yourself. This is what emotional maturity looks like. Not the absence of feeling, but the presence of choice. Not the suppression of care, but the direction of it. You still love. You still connect. You still feel deeply, but you do it on your terms, not as a reaction to someone else's behaviour. The less you care about noise, the more you can care about signals. The less you invest in drama, the more you can invest in growth. The less you react to everything, the more power you have to respond to what matters. Silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. It's full of clarity. It's full of the peace that most people spend their lives chasing in all the wrong places. And here's the part that surprised me most. When you master stillness, you don't become less connected to the world. You become more connected. Because you're no longer experiencing life through a filter of constant reaction. You're experiencing it directly, clearly, as it actually is. The happiness you've been looking for isn't in getting more, achieving more, or being seen more. It's in caring less about the things that were never going to fulfill you anyway. And that's when silence finally speaks louder than anything else.